giant video conference that Public Lab has hosted since 2014. Almost all of them by Stevie, who's in, well, the upper left for me, but wave, hello, Stevie. And what we're gonna do real quick is we'll go through some introductions. We'll be brief, and then I think each person will get a chance to talk for a few minutes. We have a pretty big crowd today, so we'll try to go through that relatively quickly. And I've sent a few questions out in advance or prompts out, and then we can open it up for more general questions in any direction. So thank you all very much. I'm going to go in the order that I see, just for a round of quick introductions. Stevie, you're first.
Okay, hi. I'm Stevie. I'm calling in from New Orleans with Tucker, who's in the corner here sleeping. And I'm really excited to share a space with all of you. I think I love events, hosting them, and participating. So I'm so excited to hear about people who share different kinds of events, and I'm really excited to learn some of your takeaways. I think I'm experiencing a takeaway right now from an event. But also I'm going to be taking notes in the talk pad, and I'm not the best note taker. So if you feel like you said something that I didn't capture properly, please go ahead and edit it. Also, my spelling is terrible, and I do not take offense to people editing my spelling.
Great. Liz, you're next for me.
Hi, I'm Liz Barry, and I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you here. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm normally based in Brooklyn with Bronwyn, but I'm calling in today from Toronto. And yeah, just thanks so much for being on.
I'll go ahead next. I'm Jeff Warren. I'm on the staff of Public Lab, and I'm facilitating today's call. And I'm in Providence, Rhode Island. Molly DeBlanc.
Hi, I'm Molly DeBlanc. I'm a digital rights advocate and avid cyclist. And as part of my job, I organize a conference that has about 350 people. I'm also in the process of organizing a summit for about 30 right now, which is something Jeff had asked about.
Great, thank you. Bronwyn?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Bronwyn. I'm in Brooklyn, New York, usually with Liz. I'm one of the Public Lab staff, and I work in the kit side of things, but I am a huge fan of in-person events, and I'm excited to hear sort of about everybody's approaches to those.
Thank you. Joyce, and remember to unmute, folks.
Hi everyone. I am in Seattle. Can everybody hear me okay? Is the feedback? Okay. I'm based in Seattle right now. I work for an organization focused on environmental justice for Black and Brown folks here in South Seattle called Got Green. And I'm an artist and organizer.
Thank you. Elena, who is showing up as Matthew.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm using my husband's account. Sorry, I'm actually Elena. I'm calling in from Boston, Mass, and I'm an artist and activist and youth worker. I work right now at the Center for Art and Community Partnerships at Mass Art, which is a public art and design college here in Boston. And as part of the work we do with our students and with our community members, we host a lot of events. So excited to share and learn from you all today.
Thank you. Aubrey?
Hi, everybody. I'm Aubrey, and I work with University of Orange. We're a free people's school in Orange, New Jersey. And so that means we use the city as our university to learn about urbanism. And Jeff asked us to join because we just got to be in Chicago with him and Ayako and Elena talking about social emergency response centers. And so we ran a social emergency response center for our full spring semester last year at the University of Orange. And We also love planning events. We just had a really, really cool event on the 28th. That was our 10th annual placemaking event, and we were celebrating the re-release of Dr. Mindy Foley Love is our board president, and she wrote a book when she was 19 with her dad, who is an organizer in Orange, and they just re-released the book. So we were celebrating that last week and had a pretty cool event. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Aiko, I know you just sat down, but if you want to go next.
I was looking for the Homeboy Came to Orange book. My name is Ayako Maruyama. So nice to be here. I am a designer at the Design Studio for Social Intervention in Boston, but I also live in Providence, Rhode Island. We started the social emergency response centers that Aubrey had mentioned. Jeff and a few people here were there in Chicago when we did one, but over 20 have happened all across the country, and there's a manual and a kit and a variety of ways in which this event has sort of unfolded and been able to manifest in different ways, in different scales, in different tempos, and to other countries as well. So we do a lot of community engagement, we do a lot of social intervention work, and really excited to sort of think about ways in which the Social Emergency Response Center can move, can continue to grow in its form as an event, but also evolve and manifest in ways beyond the event, trying to think about it more as a practice in ways people can adapt it.
Thank you. Sean? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's so glad to be here and talk with everybody. And I live and work in Guangzhou in China. And I used to work with environmental NGOs to do environmental investigations. And currently I work with middle schools to build an open lab. And we're looking forward to a series of public lab event in China. So I'm looking forward to learn from everyone to just organize a successful first public lab event in China. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Stella Morris, if you're available.
Hey everyone, my name is Stella Morris. I'm calling in from Nairobi. I'm a software developer. I joined Public Lab through GSOC last year. And so far we've managed to organize events such as Genome Release Party and Rails Girls Nairobi. And I'm happy to share our experience with you guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Stella Morris. And Sess.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. I'm calling from Nairobi, Kenya. And as Stella has said, we organize events at Rails Girls Nairobi. We have bi-weekly meetups where each meetup is meant to mentor the girls in getting to know something in open source, maybe version control or how to get started with Rails. Yeah, that's what we do. And so glad to be here. This is my first time on an OpenHour.
Thank you so much. And I don't know, the person at the bottom with the 302 number, I wonder if it's Molly? But I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
that's my phone number.
Great. Oh, this is also Molly.
Yeah, it gives you an option to call in by phone, so I did that because technology.
That's fine. We had there was another Molly invited, so I was wondering if it was a different Molly, but it's good to know. Thank you.
Well, yeah, other Molly could not get her the volume to work, so I'm repping you all. She's sad to miss. Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're basically going to go around again, but a bit more in depth, and it's great to just sort of get people's names and where you're from and a little bit of an intro. But one reason that I thought it was really interesting to get so many people who run different sorts of events around the world in a virtual room together is that the event structures that all of you run in different ways are really quite unique. And I know that events is a pretty broad category, but all of us as people who kind of design them and think about the structure of an event and what goals it is sets out to achieve, how the design of it, from the physical design, the signage, the lettering, to the facilitation design, to the framing and the sort of questions of, say, of equity or of voice that come out in the different types of events. I think I'm really interested in hearing about those, and also the specific challenges of the kinds of events that you all have run, because they vary quite a bit. So I guess I'm going to go back around again. I am going to name public lab staff as well, but you don't have to go necessarily because there are a few of us. So feel free to go ahead or to pass either way. Stevie, you're still up at the top left.
I think I might pass for now and work on some notes.
Okay. Well, I'm actually next in order, but I'm going to pass it to Liz, who I know has been furiously organizing one of Public Lab's sort of signature events, but she says no. No, she says yes now. just a few sentences, Liz, please.
Yes, twice a year we organize something called a barn raising, which is not about barns, but it is about coming together to do something bigger than any one of us could have achieved alone. And we run this using open space technology, which gives time to the people who've actually shown up to put all of their ideas together and out of all of their interests, create the schedule. And that means that our event matches exactly what the people in the room want to do. So I am interested in, if anyone else wants to say anything about open space technology, I'm interested in that, as well as many other facilitation methods.
Thank you. Molly DeBlanc, you're next.
Hi. Wow. So currently the event I'm organizing, the summit, it's called SETS, which is the Summit for Ethics and Technology and Software. It's kind of like a labor of love / a dream project. For a while I have a lot of questions around technology and ethics, and for a while I've wanted to get a group of people together to basically do all the work for me and answer my questions. I've never organized something like this before. The format was pretty heavily influenced by the work Willow Brew does, if you know who she is. She also organizes a summit periodically called Catalytic Converter, which you can read more about on the internet. So for this, I curated a first round of a list of invitees, which was people who I thought would have interesting things to say, both from within the field of like digital rights and free software and open source, and also from outside of that, the people who still think about technology. I asked each of them if they couldn't attend to recommend somebody to attend in their place. And I've been doing some surveys and some thinking with the attendees to come up with a list of topics going in that we're planning on talking about, but also I really want everybody to be coming with goals, because I'm going with goals and questions that I want to have answered.
And Molly, just for a general framing, the length of the event, number of people, and the kinds of sessions or activities that happen during it?
Sure. It looks like it's going to be 2 days. Originally, I was thinking a day and a half. The second day will be a little bit shorter than the first. There are about 40 people who've been invited. I'm expecting about 30 to be showing up, or 40 people who've shown interest out of those invited. The types of sessions. So they're going to be very conversation-based. I'm sort of counting on this idea that if you get really interesting people who are interested in things in a room together, and make sure that there's space for each of them to talk by having good, strong facilitators in each session, like the conversations that they have will be like fruitful. And I'm looking to frame each session in the form of a question.
Great, and just one more brief one. You'll be determining the questions for the sessions ahead of time, or will that be done at the event?
I'm not positive yet. I think it'll be done at the event. I'm coming up with some sample questions, I guess is how I would say it. It would be nice to go in with some more specific ideas, just to take into account that we do have a limited amount of time to talk. But I have the morning block. I already have like a sample schedule, and the morning is currently blocked off.
Sorry I just want to say, if folks want to close the pad, it's also been taken over by a troll. So go ahead and close that. Apologies. They're quite persistent.
Can we kick them out, Jeff?
I actually don't think there's much we can do. But I will ping Sebastian. Molly, you're going. Apologies for interrupting me.
I'll continue taking notes on a doc. Did anybody happen to copy it before it went over?
We will have a copy in the history, so we'll be able to recover it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Sorry.
Molly, I'm sorry. You were in the middle of a sentence. Apologies.
I think you're muted.
Oh, Molly, you're muted on your phone.
Okay. Yeah. So this is going to be taking place in September. Currently, space in the morning is blocked off to make sure that the things that people seem to have coalesced around, idea-wise, are the ones that they actually want to talk about. I want it to be very driven by the attendees, but I still want there to be enough structure that they feel as though concrete things have come out of the weekend.
Thank you. Bronwyn, you're next in my order here. Apologies, I'm juggling a couple things.
Yeah, I guess I've done in the last couple years sort of more kind of hands-on kinds of events or gatherings, kind of in say workshops or maker spaces where you kind of get a bunch of people together and sort of suss out some shared goals and sort of see what you can accomplish in a limited amount of time that is sometimes a couple hours and sometimes a couple weeks. And, you know, I think it's always sort of a challenge when you've got a bunch of people who come in with, you know, different skills and motivations and desired outcomes, to kind of get everybody to a place where something feels accomplished. And so I'm really interested in sort of different ways that people do that. I guess I have, you know, I guess I sort of come from I'm coming off of sort of some years of classroom management. So I think I do kind of tend to fall sometimes a little bit more into teaching than I want to, and sometimes a little less into sort of demonstrating than maybe I need to be. But yeah, I'm always really interested in sort of seeing how that can sort of mesh with within a larger group and sort of how folks can kind of get something done that sort of satisfies people.
Yeah, and I'm sure that can be a challenge, especially in events or when the goal has not yet been determined. To say if a group of people is sort of brainstorming something or coming up with something that they want to, a problem they want to address, but they're working together on a solution which is not yet clearly defined.
Yeah, and also acknowledging that not everybody will agree on what that goal
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
You know, even if it seems very similar, sometimes, you know, what folks are actually thinking about is really different.
Yeah. I see Will McFarland has joined us from Arts and Crafts headquarters in Somerville. Hello.
Hello.
We're just going around but if you would maybe introduce yourself in a couple sentences, and then we'll circle back to you for the longer intro.
I don't know how much was directed at me. I'm still in IT mode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll swing by you later in the order. Thanks, Will. Joyce, if you're available, maybe you could give us a little bit about the kinds of events that you've been organizing, either with the group you're with now, or you mentioned also you had some experience in Seattle with other types of events and organizations.
Yeah. So recently Got Green had an event called the Greenathon that they do every year. And essentially it pulls folks from the community together to do canvassing works on campaigns that we're pushing. So the campaign we were working on in particular was called and is called Don't Displace Dove. As some of you all might be aware, a lot of South Seattle is being gentrified and folks are being pushed out of their homes, particularly Black and brown, low income folks. And so one member of our community was getting pushed out of her apartment complex. And so we have been canvassing and just talking to people who are about to leave or just moved in, and just letting them know about the impacts of them being there. And so the Greenathon was just an effort for us to get this organizing work done. About 100 people showed up. I was a DJ there, so really making sure that when folks come, that they feel good about it. So not only are we kind of organizing together, but we're also healing together. The event kicked off with kind of a mini workshop, interactive, kind of take on canvassing and door knocking, so that folks can know what they're getting into beforehand, and how to handle certain situations. And then we left off with everyone going out into the community around the church that we gathered at, and door knocking and having them sign some of the petitions. We do work with city council, but we kind of hold them accountable to community. So we were getting them to sign a petition that we were going to present to city council. And I think one of the challenges, not necessarily with event planning, but I think that when you're doing organizing work, especially with youth, and there's a lot of tension around the this particular issue. And when we were door knocking, some folks, we had signs that said, "Don't displace the South End," and a car drove by and was like harassing some of the organizers while they were with the youth. And we didn't necessarily know how to handle that. And it was, I don't know, it was a little bit scary because they were really harassing us about it, and yelling at the youth. So that was one of the things that happened from the event. I know, Jeff, you talked about like working with folks with different like languages, and I feel like everyone in our organization knows like just a bunch of different languages, so we don't really have a problem with that. But yeah, it's definitely like a healing space for everyone. It's not like we're an outside organization telling people to come in. Like, we work directly with people and they know us and they're familiar with us. So I think that that's one of the things that makes the events go so smoothly and feel so welcoming and like uplifting for folks.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I had asked about languages in particular because we have run a barn raising event where we try to do multilingual sessions and so forth. But it can be a big thing to take on, even if there are quite a few people who speak two languages, that are among the ones that we're trying to have there. Like we're doing Spanish and English, for example, because there can be sort of like a critical mass in one language, and then it will sort of happen in that language. So yeah, I mean, I know you don't have all the answers necessarily, or you can't say them succinctly enough on the call, but are there things that really work for you in that respect?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people in events that I've organized in the past, people will just, like, for example, speak in Spanish, and then maybe folks that speak English, they just won't understand in that moment, and that's okay, because a lot of times people that are, you know, that as a foreign language as their first language, and they may not understand English, they're not understanding. So we kind of see it as, I don't know, I've seen events where it's been half and half, and you kind of get all of the information, and you actually prioritize folks that don't speak English as a primary language, just as a way to kind of like decolonize the event in a small way.
That's
well, a big
fantastic.
way, actually. People really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about that. Elena, did you want to talk a little bit about either the CERC that you've done at MassArts or other events, actually? And I think I had sort of tried to pick your brain a little bit about working with students and professors and the sort of complexities of working in an academic context as well, but no obligation.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to share about CERC. Does Aya or anyone else want to give more context to the CERC for others first? Or I can jump in. I just want to.
No, maybe that's a good idea. Ayako, would you like to kind of more broadly introduce the CERCs, especially since there's so many people on the call who have participated or run one?
Absolutely. So the Social Emergency Response Center, or CERC, is shared experience. It's a metaphorical space. It began with sort of thinking about, we gather for times of emergency, whether it be a pop-up, not a pop-up, but a temporary sort of structure in a gym or a stadium or what have you, to really address emergencies and provide food, shelter, clothing, information. So we sort of in using that metaphor, again, there's a whole backstory that I can go into, but for now I can sort of speak to that in, November of 2016, we started, really picked up a lot of momentum on creating an social emergency response center. So in times of social emergency, what do we have? What do we do? What procedures do we have in place? None. So we really decided as a design studio for intervention, how might we create this? How might we create a space? What sort of things would happen in there? So really the CERC, again, as I mentioned, since we did our first prototype in Boston, which happened on Friday to Sunday, and then the following Friday to Sunday in the same space, it had a variety of different stations that was categorized into making, healing, cooking, plotting, but first and foremost, radically welcoming people as well. So it's kind of like our fifth quadrant, really paralleling again with that ideas around food, water, shelter, information. So we're really thinking about, as we were designing it with community members, thinking about a space to not just gather, but also heal, a space to create together, a space to plot and think about rebuilding. So it ended up being, it manifests usually. I have here the mass art, little handout schedule that the students made at a CERC that was made in April. So they have, making, healing, plotting, cooking, and then these different events that are happening at different times. So like, from 6:30 to 7:30, there's like weaving and embroidery making, and throughout there's like a salad making. You can just sort of chop.
Oops, Ayako, you're skipping a little bit.
Immigrant support, resource. I'm sorry, I'm talking so fast.
Can you
hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. A CERC, again, it's a creative pop-up space co-led by all kinds of people. I'll stop there and let Elena speak about the experience that she's had both in organizing and participating in it.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Ayako, for setting some context. So we, at MassArt, which is the college that I work at, became familiar with the CERC idea last year, probably around this time. and we're working with our center works with a lot of students at Mass Art, many of whom are very active in social justice, you know, and organizing work throughout the city and also at the college, trying to push the institution into a more just space. And they were feeling really fatigued and really like just needing a lot of support and just emotionally and kind of spiritually through their work. And being an artist and design college, we just gravitated so naturally toward the circ model where people can engage in lots of different ways and kind of learn through conversation and through engagement, learn and share both. And in a lot of ways, the kind of what Ayako was describing is these kind of little quadrants or sections where people can kind of naturally go between spaces and you know, learn about nutrition and, you know, make some food together with someone they don't know, or, sorry, I don't know if you can hear that, but there's some sort of sound in my computer. I don't know how to turn it off.
I think you're getting a Skype call.
I'll go away in a second. Sorry. Anyway, so that kind of like emergent, oh, that's so distracting. I'm sorry. That kind of like emergent, free flowing experience was really attractive to us, and also our office does a lot of like public free community events where we're not necessarily inviting certain people, but we're like just opening the doors and just welcoming as many folks who are interested in joining us. So the radical welcome kind of piece was a huge it was so natural to what we already do, and to like give it language to say this is what we want to be, you know, this is how we want to be interacting with the public folks who come and join us, and we want to intentionally like make set the stage for it being a radically welcoming place. I think was really valuable for our students to think through that, because I think we do it kind of because it's who we are, but to like name it and to say, you know, okay, you know, the students actually identified as they sort of self-selected into like leading the makerspace or leading the cooking, leading the plotting, and leading the healing. And then there were a group who led documentation, a group that led outreach, and a group that led the radical welcoming piece. And so each of those students there was like a team leader and folks who were part of the team, and they just really were strategic and like how do we want to document, welcome, do outreach, all these different pieces. And it was about 40 students we worked with to pull off the most recent circ, which was at the beginning of April, and just really successful and beautiful vibe throughout, very healing and kind of just warm and supportive for folks to come in and engage in lots of different ways.
Thank you. Yeah. Ayako, you had a question or comment?
I think I kind of I'm very grateful for you illustrating that, and if it was an appropriate time to sort of talk about 3 high-level points that I think CERC can really contribute to this conversation specifically about events.
Sure.
By my system. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. We do want to get through everybody, but absolutely, I think it's helpful at this point.
Yeah, I'll just put them into 3, and then if anyone who wants to like talk more about them later on after this call, at least like I could say like these are some things that I think are unique about CERC. One is that we're sharing an experience with unexpected and expected attendees. And the fact that we're co-creating space sort of dissolves the fact that some people are attending and some people are hosting. You kind of like, it meshes together. 2 is that, part of the design is making it recognizable so that it feels unified. The fact that over 20 have happened, in the past 16 months means that there's this sort of cohesion when it's like up on social media, or people feel like, oh, we have a CERC, like Chicago wants a CERC now, or they want to do, so recognizable to feel unified. And that really, font, the visuals, the posters, a lot of the collateral we send in kits are actually signage and large interactive posters. And then, so thirdly, we want it to be replicable and exciting. So not making having people be able to imagine, like step into a circ and then imagine, oh man, we can do this, or oh wow, we really need this, or that I can imagine, I really want to bring my sister to this, or I really think my, mentor at home could really use a space like this to sort of recalibrate. So sharing an experience with unexpected and expected people, recognizable, to feel unified, and replicable and exciting.
I love that, especially this element where it is so clear to people that it is there for them to do, like that they could do a circ, and it's not simply something that they must or that they are being invited to participate in just in that one moment. So yeah, thank you. Aubrey, did you want to talk a bit about the way that you've built on the circ format a bit and sort of stretched it out?
Sure. I also, if I can, Molly sent me 2 pieces she wanted to share about our take on invites, or sorry, on events. So one is that she and her friend kind of really use this idea of the elegant invitation. So no matter what event you're doing, thinking about who you're inviting and extending an elegant invitation. And that can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't just have to be like a little thing in a, envelope. And then also that the planning should reflect the event. So who it's for and who's going to be there should be a part of the planning committee. But the way that we, decided to do the circ, it kind of all, obviously, like the idea of a social emergency really kind of like came to a head and resonated with a lot of people after the election. It also kind of timed out for us locally. We'd been a little while before had been displaced from a place that we'd been working for a long time, and a new kind of avenue of where we could do programming at a local church had opened up, but they weren't quite sure how to interact with us yet. And so in this sort of like post-election shock, they were like, what can we do? And so we suggested to have a potluck, and then figured out how our programming over the entirety of our spring semester. So we're not like an accredited school, we're a free people's school, but we still operate on some of the same principles of a school that we find useful, like the semester system. So our whole spring semester was structured around a social emergency response center, but in a lot of different ways. And I think the fact that it was stretched out over such a long period of time allowed us to kind of dig deeper into all these different quadrants or vectors. So rather than having an event that has all of these things kind of at once, we had like a podcast making series, so we could dig more into that. And the plotting, we had like a series of finding what you're for and coalition building workshops. So that was sort of like, we could dig into that a little bit deeper. If that, I can kind of like pitch it off there, and if there's other questions, I can come back to it.
Thank you. Just moving through my list here, the order that I see, Sean, if you wanted to talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you've done or that you are planning in the coming months, please go ahead. And unmute as well. There you
go. In the coming months, I don't have things planned to happen. But like as you may already know, like Public Lab is going to have a series of citizen science training activities in China, I think around September and October. So I'm actually working on that with the Chinese local collaborator. Sorry, the school's ring. Yeah, and I think in China, and I want to share a little bit of my experience working on event in China in case any of you want to organize event in China. So in China, if you want to organize an event, I think it's really better to be prepared in advance, because there might encounter some kind of pressures. Some is from the foundation, from the government. I think there's several sectors are very important the first is who is the organizer of the event. If you're like a foreign NGO without the Chinese registration, is not allowed to organize China events in China unless you find Chinese organizers who can help with this, and or you find a foreign companies who has registered in China. And so in public lab case, that we find Pacific Environment as our organizers, but because of the different organizers, so they have their own requests, so it might not work like as what we want, and that is very common in China. Like you want to organize an event, but it's turn out not like what you want. But I think it will figure out. And secondly is about the participation numbers. Legally, like an event over 200 people, the organizers has to report in advance, and an event over 500 people, the organizers has to submit for approval. That's different kind. For report, you don't need approval, but over 500 people has to have the approval from the government, so the event can run. And for the event has sensitive people, sensitive participations, even though it's like under 20 people has to report in advance. And when all this figure out, I think, and the government know what you're going to do, and I think, but for those part, any kind of event has to take into consider, and also a location, like a event, if it's happened in the university, it's happened in the campus, that will be good. But and also in like a 5-star like hotel, like in Sheldon, the conference room in that will be safe. But in like event, if it's organized in a square, it is no matter how many participations, if it happened in a square, has to submit for approval. And like, yeah, so the location choose is very important. You better to choose, any organizers should choose some places that common known to everybody. So that's contribute to, and if all this settled down, I think the risks of the event being canceled is highly reduced. Yeah, that's, and I'm still trying to figure out the public lab trainings in China. I hope everything will be fine.
Thank you, Sean. I'm sure it will be. It sounds like a really exciting series, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Stella Maris and Seth collaborated on an event in Nairobi, and I was just super impressed with it. They've actually written about how they went into it in a way that was really fascinating to me, partly because it mirrored in some ways a kind of checklist that we've been publishing on how to run a barn raising. Like, you know, how far out do you have to begin planning? You know, how many people are involved? What are the logistics? Who do you contact? You know, they lined up sponsors, but I'll let them tell a little bit more about that. Stella Maris, did you want to start it off, or Sess?
Yeah, I'll start it off, then Seth can maybe add what I'll forget. So we organized Rails Girls Mega Coding event. It was a 2-day event. The first day was an installation party. This is because most of the participants were newbies, and so we wanted to install Ruby on Rails in their machines so that the following day we don't waste a lot of time in the installations. We also had a coach's dinner so that the coaches bond and know what they're supposed to do the following day, so that they're not like strangers during the event, and also assign them roles for the following day. Then the second day was hands-on. Yeah, and so that is where the participants got introduced to Ruby on Rails. Then now they got to start off their first project. Then to ensure that they continued coding, we normally have bi-weekly meetups so that they continue working on their projects. While organizing the event, I would say our main challenge was funds, because most of Rails Girls organizers are straight from campus, and most of them by then didn't have jobs. So how we managed to do that was by emailing potential sponsors in advance. Yeah, Sess, if you could add something.
You're a little garbled. I see you're unmuted. Oh, we hear you now. Good.
Something that was pretty
Sess, I'm sorry. The connection seems a bit slow. If you wanted to type it into the chat, we can read it out.
during the mega coding event is that we had coaches.
Okay, there will be a bit of lag before Sess gets that message, but as soon as you start typing,
Right.
we can go ahead and read them out. And I apologize if I'm...
Really, okay.
Okay, maybe best if you type it in, and if we get a better... Oh, I see. I think Sess is going to try to reconnect. Well, one thing I really liked about the Rails Girls meetup was it was a very ambitious event in the sense that, as Stella Maris pointed out, it involved getting 40 or 60 people, somewhere in that range, to install a software framework on their computer and then learn how to use it, acquire skills, form partnerships or relationships with other people to begin working on projects long term. And it was even followed by a series of follow-up events that were on specific skills. So I've been seeing an amazing set of sort of tweets going out about, like, this week we'll be doing testing. This week we'll be talking about that. So I really appreciated that. Stella Maris, did you want to add, perhaps, since Sess is reconnecting, what you imagine Sess might have been saying?
I'm totally not sure what was on her mind.
All right, well,
yeah.
This may be Sess coming back. Well, I just wanted to say we're getting close to the end of the hour within the next minute or so. I'm going to stay on here for a little while longer. I know we started 10 minutes late. But if Sess comes on, a bit more, in the meantime, perhaps Will could talk a little bit about the format at Arts and Crafts. And then we can go to sort of more general discussion questions. Sess, are you there?
Mute if you're not talking. I think that there's some feedback going on.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Oh, great. Sess, go ahead, please.
Okay, so during our event, we made a point of making the speeches short, like no speech was more than 10 minutes, so that to get the participant attentive and straight to the point. And then we had the members, the attendees, divided into groups of 2, and then assigned a code so that they got started with Rails. What we did during the breakout session is that we focused on getting things done, so that if it's something we're doing, we write a particular code, have the attendees see what's happening, and then raise their curiosity so that you can explain to them later. Yes, so our main aim was to get their curiosity and then explain things later. Yeah, I guess that's all.
Thank you, Seth. I wanted to note, just as we're closing out the hour, and we can continue going, but we've heard from people from very different sort of parts of, I think, what you can see as a broader effort. I mean, Stella Maris and Sess are working on software projects that actually plumb the online interactions and facilitation of Public Lab itself. So the kind of work that we do to coordinate, to publish, to share is actually running on systems which either they or the people they're training have created. And there's a lot of intentionality to that. Linking all the way back to something like a barn raising, or the places where Public Lab overlaps with CERC. So I know that we've been sort of a little here, a little there, software, crafts, DJing, barn raising, ethics, but I like that we've had a chance to hear from all those different aspects. Maybe Will, we haven't had a chance to hear from you about the open shop format, or anything you wanted to mention about Parts and Crafts.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped in late, so I missed a little bit. I apologize for that. But the main thing that I feel like we have to add, and from listening to people describe various kinds of meetings, that I want to echo the importance of is the importance of creating structures that are welcoming, but specifically like prioritizing welcoming as a job and as a task that has to happen. So, especially in technical communities, right? So Parts and Crafts is a community makerspace. We mostly work with kids between the ages of like 7 and 15. But a lot of the stuff is applicable to grown-up communities as well. And in any technical community, a lot of people are going to come in and feel like that it isn't necessarily the place for them. They're going to come in and feel like, I don't really know if I'm the kind of person who likes to build circuits or program computers or whatever. And the easiest way for things to go wrong is for people to come into a space and not know what to do, not see a clear path to do anything in particular, feel like bored, sad, lonely, and then go away and be like, oh, I guess it wasn't for me. Oh well. And so we try to create, like, when people come in to all of our programs, one of the first things we do is we have a big mandatory meeting that requires everyone to be there. So there's this thing that newcomers get to feel like there's a specific thing that's happening, and it's not just a newcomer only thing. It's a thing for everyone. We also make sure that we open with tours of the space, and sometimes we require people who have been around for decades not decades, we've been around for exactly 1 decade, to participate in these tours, just because it destigmatizes this is just, everyone needs, goes through this, and everyone learns what they're doing. And there's a bunch of other things, but that's kind of the gist, is just, can we make these systems where, that just make sure that no one is immediately like bored and confused. And it's really simple when you think about it that way, but actually the majority of group or community spaces I've ever gone to in my life, like, I go into and then I don't quite know what to do, and I've become like a pretty outgoing person who's willing to go up to anyone and be like, hey, what are we doing? What's going on? But it's taken a lot of training, and most of that training has come from running my own events, and it's not something that everyone necessarily has.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And maybe to sort of anyone who wants to chime in on this, I think one thing that often happens at the beginning of any given event, especially where there's new people around, is that sort of moment of ice breaking. And we have a unique challenge because a lot of the things we're doing are very hands-on. We want people to be doing things, making things, picking up a tool, or getting into a group of movement of some kind, dancing, or different kinds of ice breaking that that come with their own challenges. So how has it worked well? I know just in my experience at the Chicago Circ, I was sort of like, is anyone going to make this newspaper with me? Is anyone going to make this newspaper with me? But when I sat down and kind of just started making buttons with people, like that melted away, and there was a sort of a natural on-ramp for me. And then we did get the newspaper made anyway, but it took a little bit more informality in the initial activity that I got into. Anyone raise your hand or just go for it? Aubrey?
Yeah, in a more like facilitated space, an icebreaker that we just used last weekend we did a community organizer and urbanism training. So one of our ethos at the University of Orange is that everyone has something to teach and everyone has something to learn. And so we used that as our opening question. And it doesn't take as long as you would expect as an icebreaker to go around. And it was really cool because it did kind of create links with people right away that like over their lunch break, they were like, oh, I do want to learn that from you. Can you help me with that? So that was a good one for us.
Yeah. I also, it just occurred to me, one of the things that broke the ice for me as a co-organizer of the Circ in Chicago was the putting up of the signs, the ceremonial putting up of the signs and the making of small tape rolls. That was really cool and fun, and late night before the event went up. And it reminded me of what, I think, was it Stella Maris was talking about, of the people, coaches meeting each other and getting to know each other a bit so they're not strangers the day of runs.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff, Stella Maris, do you do like with the coaches together? Is that structured as well, or is it more just open-ended and social?
It's open-ended and social. So we go to a cool hotel and bite something as we get to know each other. It's basically a very casual thing.
Like going to a tavern, like rock bottom. I think Aiko and I and Barrett and a few other people did that before the Circ. Other folks have sort of ice-breaking moment stories, or sort of getting the organizers together ahead of time, comments or questions. Really anything. Go ahead. Any questions you may have. Aiko, go ahead, and then I think Stella.
You go ahead.
Stella Maris, did you have a question? I see you're not on mute, but I see you're not. Oh, I guess not. I guess it's all you.
Two things. They manifest physically. So one thing that we offer to people is this sort of symbolic, almost experiential intake form on a clipboard, and it has a bunch of check boxes asking people 3 simple questions. What are some of the things you're feeling in the social emergency? What would you want to, again, similar to what Aubrey mentioned, like questions alluding to what you would want to gain or feel or experience, and what would you want to offer or teach or give to a space, this space particularly. And one thing that struck me, again, people have a chance to, it's also a way for people to write their name and email, so that at the end of the day we have sort of ways for people to stay in touch. So it's this really simple sheet, and some really interesting ways that people have shared their insights with me, like they didn't realize they were feeling, depression and lack of sleep and this sort of desire to wheat paste on everything, in this time, until they realized, until they were asked. And so until these were, these little check boxes were offered to them, and it also helped them sort of contextualize their personal experience within this larger framework of a social emergency response center. And then the second thing we sort of do, again, because in the spirit or sort of with the purpose that we want to create ground rules in a space where there's people coming from different spaces, there's a welcoming wall. which has a pen dangling from it, and some people have already written on it, and we're asking people, you know, what ways do you want to, are you going to commit to sort of bringing in your whole selves and welcoming others to sort of bring in their whole selves. So it sort of becomes this casual wall upon entry that people can sort of write down things like listen for understanding, or be open to ideas, or some people just like draw on it, you know, just naturally. So I just wanted to share those two tools that we use for not necessarily breaking ice, but entering space.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I had meant to say when I noted the end of the hour, if folks need to get going, no harm, no foul. We started 10 minutes late, and please go ahead. And thank you all very much. Yeah, you know, I'm curious. So the intake form idea I thought was really powerful, and it's something that we did when we did a circ at Arts and Crafts in Somerville. There are things that we sort of have people go through, and you know, we particularly note, especially if there are newcomers at the barn raising, we encourage folks to try things out. I think the idea of there being like this kind of self-checklist, a way to sort of evaluate or track your own experience through a space. It's interesting because it has a narrative aspect, but it also, the intake form is kind of like a bureaucracy hack. You know, it comes on a clipboard. It's like a form. So there's sort of a humor to that as well, and I think it's an interesting model. I really liked it.
I definitely have to credit Judith Lehman, one of our friends, who sort of helped shape that metaphor and that sort of bureaucracy hack. Symptoms.
Yeah, indeed. I had a thought, but it just went out of my head. So it was about setting the frame. This is something that I know that Kenneth Bailey, who's also DS4SI, has talked a lot about. But Kenny talks about, like, well, you all do, but I just remember he particularly eloquently, you know, spoke this when we were in Chicago. But the frame of a particular event, what people assume about its purpose and its sort of politics or its values as they come in the door, is something that I think is very difficult to, well, it takes care to craft. And it comes through in many aspects of an event. And I guess, do folks have thoughts on that or questions? I think it's something that can be hard to set a tone, especially as people wander into a space over the course of the day.
Well, I wanted to just sort of share something. So speaking of Judith Lehman, who I also work with at Massart, she has been working this week to do this really cool, creating this space with students to really dissect what a critique is and what, because it's an art school where we do a lot of critiquing at our school. I mean, she very much kind of without even realizing it, used the circ model when creating this space for her students in this kind of big atrium space to kind of make their work public. They've been doing it over the course of the semester, you know, dissecting and kind of creating a toolbox for doing effective critique. And one of the things they were doing today, which I just thought was so cool, and it kind of builds off the radical welcoming idea, was that the students were actually like calling themselves tour guides and like walking, like, as people enter the space, kind of like teaming up with them and welcoming them one-on-one, and then sort of like walking them through the space and introducing different sections and kind of having these one-on-one interactions with folks. That I think a little bit gets at what you were just saying, Jeff, around like expectations, and, you know, everyone's coming in with a slightly different frame and perspective. And so how can those kind of come together and be more, just met with like real person-to-person conversation and kind of fleshing things out a little bit, or at least beginning to. And they were happening in like triads, and like, you know, there was like one or two tour guides with like 4 people or something. So I just thought it was an interesting way of welcoming and of orienting people and making them feel like kind of leaning into the space. And then there was another thing I was going to say, but I think it's gone too. It's getting late for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, in a lot of these kinds of events, like there is a really, there's a complex dynamic. There's issues of inequality. There's issues of race, of justice at stake. And speaking for public lab events, we don't know that everyone who walks in the door has a really good familiarity with all of that, or anyone does necessarily. And that can be really complex. For the sort of, you know, one end of it, there's, you know, we have a code of conduct at all public lab spaces. But at the other end, there's just a need to have a space for conversations and communications of different kinds to happen. And it's like, it is communicated often through the experience of attending the event and being there for a day or 2 days or 3 days. And I think I think there are a lot of interesting sort of mechanisms, both very explicit ones and very implicit ones, for communicating some of that context. Aubrey.
Oh yeah, so one tool that we use that everyone is welcome to use, and I'll post it in the chat, is that we show sometimes a short video called the domino effect, which illustrates the processes that Dr. Foley Love and her colleague, Dr. Wallace, studied serial forced displacement, so starting all the way from segregation to gentrification. And so it's like a really quick sort of thing that we sometimes show at the beginning of events just to lay the foundation that like the issues that we're talking about are structural. So I'll post that in here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess to be honest, we could probably talk about this time because it is infinite. Maybe if it's, you know, since it's getting about 17 past the hour, to wrap things up, I think I would love to send an email to connect everyone who's here today and to encourage folks to have follow-up conversations. And if anyone has any sort of closing thoughts. There'll be an opportunity also to ask questions and follow up as well. Stevie, did you want to say something?
I was just going to warn people that I've muted everyone. So if you want to close that, unmute yourself.
Yeah.
I had just one final thing to add, which is that I feel like for me anyway, when planning an event, there is a tendency to think about the event as an organizer and as from a kind of bird's eye view, and think, what are the things I want to have happen at this event? And I have to very consciously think through, you know, turn that around and say, what is the experience I imagine an individual to have, and try to really think through, like, someone comes in, what do they do? Who do they talk to? You know, how does it go from a step-by-step way? Because I think when we are designing these spaces, it's very easy to look at them kind of as like a floor plan, rather than through the perspective of the person walking in the door.
Thank you. All right. Well, I guess just a very big thank you to everybody, and another note of apology for the disruption we had towards the beginning and in the middle of the call. I think I'm pleased that we were able to have a call, and it went relatively smoothly once we got it started. So thanks for being here, and I hope to see you all, you know, on the internet or in person in the near future.